But if we talk about human nature for a second, right? Why do people do long distance stuff? Like, if you look back at the history of humans and what we've accomplished in the past, is that we have a tendency to want to explore and push ourselves as a species, and that's what makes us great. Like, obviously, our expansion in the past, and so there is a distinct thing within humans where we want to prove ourselves and grow and do something that is adventurous and to the next level. And so I'm always just trying to seek a new adventure.
Welcome back to the Perform Well podcast. This is the podcast for you if you're looking for performance and wellness optimization so that you can not only smash your career, but also have a better life, better relationships, and better health. We believe that performance and wellness are yin and yang and work together. So listen in as we dive into topics that are going to help you optimize your life for the better.
Welcome back to another episode of the Perform Well podcast, and today we have a special guest. We have Rob. I think our first ever guest that we had on the first studio in You Know What?
Second. Oh, first studio, because we had Jenny at yours, didn't we? But yeah, Rob is our first actual podcast guest that we had on the show when we were starting to get the production quality up.
Yeah, and on virtual, you can't see how short he is. So, and this one, he looks the same height.
It makes me feel taller because obviously I'm always next to Nick.
That's really good.
Always giving me compliments.
Oh, always. The last time we had you on, Rob, we were talking about ice baths, people buying you ice baths. I think one of our most viral clips came from yourself.
Yeah.
When you were speaking. Yeah, because do you remember that little reel that I cut down for you? Yeah, people love that. People love the fact that there was just a man sitting in a bin.
Oh, mate.
This is what I mean, mate. You just got to make it work, mate.
Wait, I'll tell you
whatever you've got.
Just to kick this podcast off, though, I just want to say, right, that we had one of the craziest cycles on the weekend. And I want Rob to explain it. I want Rob to explain the level of difficulty and shit that went on that Saturday.
To be honest, I think there's only one way to explain this. Just imagine that you think you've got everything sorted, everything's perfect, you've set up everything, you've got all the equipment, you've done all the training, and it's just one of those things that are going to go so smoothly, and it just went so horribly wrong. Where do we start, mate?
I mean, we've got to start with the main thing. So for anyone who hasn't seen our stories, we basically went for a nighttime cycle. Dan, you've done a nighttime cycle before, is that right? So you know how dark it can get when it's country roads, right? Like, it's pitch black. So, I mean, I spent £100 on lights for my bike, which is quite a lot for a bike. The lights you buy for that are going to be ridiculous. Rob had his lights, which we'll talk about in a second. And I had these really fancy lights, and they just stopped working. They stopped working. And
so what was it? We got it was from Southampton to Salisbury, and I think our average speed was about 18 miles an hour, which is sort of 4 miles an hour over our average. So it was great. It's going smoothly. Get to Salisbury, Nick's lights just cut out.
Yeah.
Front light, and then my lights are they're dimming. So it's and we're in the back streets. It's pitch black. There's no lights around. There's no street lights. There's no cars. There's no nothing. And then obviously his lights go. My lights are dimming, so we literally can't see anything. What else happened? The dog.
Oh, the dog. Oh my god. So not only was Rob's lights literally lighting up the equivalent of a potato in terms of luminance, then had a dog chasing us at night. Completely couldn't see anything. Just heard this aggressive Doberman style dog chasing us, and all we were thinking in our head is, if this attacks one of us, we are fucked.
I looked at Nick, and I could just tell that he already accepted defeat.
What was it? Did it just get out? Was there just a dog that got out then?
I think it's because it was so dark. We couldn't see. We didn't know if there was any bushes. We could literally see maybe half a meter around us. So we didn't know if there was a bush or a fence or a house. All we just heard was this gnarly growl. And we're like, shit. And obviously then it starts chasing. We can hear it start whatever dog does, gallop or whatever. It sounded like a bloody gallop.
It was a big dog, and it was aggressive.
Yeah, and then we just looked at each other we're fucked if it gets out.
Oh my god. I mean, with the light situation though, the reason why they conked out is because I came back home the next day, read up on them, and for some stupid reason, they've put a setting on there where the on switch is blue if it's over 20% battery, and when it's under 20%, it's red. It was blue when I put it on, But it's only anything over 20%, which is stupid because it could be 21%, be blue, and you think it's fully charged, and then it's 19% as soon as you turn it on. It's like it's the worst design ever. Oh my god!
But this is what I mean.
I'm expecting like floodlights on your bike for £100. I'm expecting like
they were.
They were bright.
The
worst thing is we're 25 miles from home and we start seeing it flashing as a warning, and then we're both thinking, "Fuck, how bad is this going to get?" And then when it comes out, it is the scariest thing ever. I can't see anything, but obviously until Rob, you put a light on my bike, I was feeling the road as it was happening. So every now and then I'd hit a pothole, hit gravel, I would skid all over the place, and it was the most dangerous thing ever. And let's not talk about cars that could barely see us driving over the hill, and then a full beam light just blinds you. And then on top of that, Rob's tyre explodes.
You could not have more of a nightmare run. You really couldn't. On the bright side, hopefully, in a couple of weeks' time, all this stuff has happened now. So as you say, you're prepped for it when it comes round for it. So it should be a dandy old trip where you're not overly concerned about having to worry about, things are going to happen. We know things are going to happen. But you'll be fine. You'll be fine. I'll be there rooting you on.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. It's because we're doing so many cycles at the moment, we're kind of just learning what could go wrong.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be things that haven't gone wrong that now might go wrong on the trip, on the cycle, on the jog. But we've got a team there, which is great. We've got you there. We've got the other guys there. And hopefully we'll have the resources to fix it like there and then straight away. It'll be fine. But all the things, the necessities that, what you should bring with yourself, what spare items you need, how you're going to feel after a certain amount of time. It's just all the things that you want to get out of the way and done with and realise we've already experienced that now. So it should be good enough to now jump in end of next week.
Mate,
what's your boy's biggest fear? Like, what is your genuine biggest fear going on this ride?
I'll let Nick go first on this one.
Mate, okay, yeah, I was just going to say, I don't think fear is the right word because I'm not fearful of any part of it. I am deeply unsettled by the discomfort that I'm going to feel after 50 miles. And a big part of me realises that I'm going to be very uncomfortable for 850 miles of the 891 miles we're doing. And I just don't want to be uncomfortable for that long, to be honest with you. I'm not scared of it. It's just, But I'm not very good with downhills, as Rob knows. If it rains and it's downhill and it's snakes around corners, Rob can literally take his hands off the bar and go 60 kilometers an hour. But I'm like holding onto my brake for dear life, and my forearm is getting cramped up. I don't know.
I mean, I think you boys, honestly, go on, Rob, go on.
I was going to say, I think Nick's strengths are, I say strengths because he's such a big lad. Like his flats and downhills is where it works well for him. Uphills, it's a little bit harder because he's shifting more weight. Whereas uphills for me, they're great. I love them. So that should be your strength, mate. Downhills.
Exactly, but I'm just petrified of them. And you know why? You know what it was? We were on the Isle of Wight and we're going down the military road or women road, I think it was. And basically, it's a really steep, long decline for about feels like a mile. It's probably half a mile, and you can get speed 70 to 80 kilometers an hour quite easily, without having to put any effort on the pedals. And then the wind was blowing so strong from the east, or from the south, sorry, that my back wheel started to snake at one point. And I'm going so fast with nothing protecting me should I fall off. Like, skin's going to get scraped off, everything like that. And you're just hoping that the bike can stay steady. You know what I mean? Because there's a certain point when it comes to speed on a bike that it kind of runs straighter, if that makes sense. So the faster you go, in some ways it's better. But there's a certain point where it's then too dangerous and it starts to get wobbly. And I hate that because if Rob falls off, he weighs as much as a leaf, right? So he's gonna fall on the ground. He's probably gonna levitate off the ground or something. He's probably not gonna get hurt. But if I fall off, I'm breaking every bone in my body. I'm getting fucked up, mate.
Well, when I did my big cycle, because I did a 60-kilometer one in Lanzarote, which was absolutely incredible for the sights that I saw. However, when you're on, because I'd never been on a fully carbon bike before, when you're going down a hill, the most terrifying thing is you literally feel just the whole bike do this constantly when the wind starts to hit it. As soon as you get a cross breeze, it's literally just backwards and forwards. So honestly, boys, you're going to do so well. And actually, this brings you on to a nice topic area for today. I want to talk a little bit about kind of where we are as kind of a culture and gym and fitness. Like, if you look at it, how many people out there are doing uncomfortable big journeys? Like, you had the hardest geezer at the start of the year. Ashley Kane just recently did his Ultraman, didn't he? I don't know if you guys kept up with that. He kayaked, cycled and ran the length of the UK. You know, so you boys, you'll be totally fine. Don't even know what that is. Breezy. But yeah, like, I feel like a lot more people are wanting to get uncomfortable, and I want to get your boys' views on that. Like, aside from the jog that you're doing now, what would be kind of the biggest thing you'd ever look to do?
Go on, Nick. Kick it off.
Do you know what, Rob? You're the man. You've got loads of things lined up, man.
The thing is, I know what I want to do. There's hundreds of people have done it. I say hundreds. And I've got to say this quietly because Molly might be listening, but I want to climb Mount Everest. That's where I sort of call it as the pinnacle, quite literally the pinnacle. But obviously, I've done like the Sahara run. We're doing the cycle. I want to do a triple Ironman. But yeah, I think for me, the pinnacle would be Everest.
Yeah.
Go on, Nick.
Mine used to be that, Rob, to be honest with you. That's what actually got me into everything to begin with when I was younger. But there's something about Everest that plays my mind every time I think about it. And it's like, you get the most elite mountaineers that have climbed so many different mountains, and like, they would absolutely smash us on any climb. And even those guys are faced with, you know, death at some point. Like, maybe that's because of lack of planning from the team that they're with, or falling down a crevasse, which you can't really always know how to
I
deal
think
with.
The thing with these extreme challenges, though, is I think maybe High Rocks kind of like opened the door for me in terms of like my vision, because it's like, you can do everything to prepare for this, and sometimes it can take the smallest of things to realize that actually your life is in danger. Even like being rushed to hospital in High Rocks, it's like that could have been the space of like 5 or 10 minutes where my life could have gone one of two ways, getting kidney failure after that. So it's like, you've got that, which is, you think it's quite safe, but really it's like there is an extreme side to it. So obviously when you take our cycle, it's like it can only take one thing to happen: a gust of wind, bad weather, tiredness, closing your eyes for 3 seconds, and then obviously you've got your Mount Everest and your K2s and all of that stuff, where it only takes one very little thing in the bigger picture for something quite drastic to happen. So sometimes maybe people don't actually realize that.
No, I do agree. I think a lot of the time, like, I was speaking to a lass since launching our program, because this week we launched our program, and I was speaking to a lass about her wanting to do High Rocks, and I was like, what is your like gunning for doing a big High Rocks event? She'd never done High Rocks before, and she was like, I just like doing things that are really hard and out there that I would never dream of doing 10 years ago. And I'm like, I fucking love that attitude. That's quality, because I think more people are diving into it. Like, I wouldn't have done triathlons this year. Like, that for me was a big step out of my comfort zone, because my God, you boys know that I hated cardio like it was the plague. So now you're chucking me in a zone of like coming and doing some of the legs of you on the jog, which I can't wait to do. Granted, I run really poorly on low sleep. So I will probably be bitching and moaning more than you guys. But I'm excited to obviously face that challenge. I think when you overcome those things, you feel like you've almost gone up a level in your life. You've done something that people haven't done. Like, I look at my triathlon medals, I'm like, you fucking did that. Like, you went and did something that I'd never think of doing. But I think discomfort's one of those things that people are working towards a lot more. Now, we were obviously speaking about your cycle. In terms of the route that you've got planned for the cycle, we've got some stops along the way. What do you think when it comes to situations, when you're put in those uncomfortable situations, what is the biggest motivator for each of you when you are put in that really uncomfortable position?
Do you know what? This is really tricky, because like, it's easy to say that in your head and your mind, you've got this big vision of like finishing it and everything that's going to happen at the end of it, and you're like working towards it. But sometimes having that vision like at the forefront of your mind can sometimes be distracting from just being in the moment. I find sometimes being in the moment and just like not thinking about what's next, but thinking about the next step is oftentimes the easiest thing and best thing to do when it comes to long distance. Because it is so hard to break down something that is 900 miles when you're at mile 10. Do you know what I mean? But it's much easier to think, right, in 30 miles time, we're going to be going to Tiverton, and we're going to be meeting the support team. They're going to have a coffee ready for us. And, that's a lot more motivating. So it's about breaking down these goals into bite-sized pieces and having some idea of the end goal that you're trying to achieve. That's what I find. But I've said this to Rob many times, where we're riding together the other day, and I remember saying to him, like, I hate being on the bike. Like, anytime I'm on the bike for a long period of time, I hate it. But then afterwards, you're like, that was cool. That was really good. So it's weird.
To be honest, that is my reason. Not the fact he hates being on the bike, but that end bit. I love the fact that he's cycling with me. He does hate parts of it, but he loves most of it. Okay, let's say we get 200 miles in, and like that, you get those little thoughts when you're like, I don't want to do it. Why am I doing this? This is hard. It's now raining. And all of the things along the way are saying, just stop. But it's that sense of like euphoria at the end that you spent the last year, 2 years, sometimes even longer, training for that moment. And a simple decision, in the moment decision that you can make to say, nothing's stopping me from stopping. But then it's that, well, I've worked for 2 years, 3 years, 1 year for a feeling that I might get tomorrow if I just keep going. And I make that hard decision just to carry on going. And that's where it's like that mental strength to say, I'm going to keep going. Okay. Because I know the meaningfulness behind this. I know the feeling of euphoria that I'll get if I do make that tough decision now. That's what keeps me going anyway.
No, I think that the boys just on, like, when it comes to motivators, I mean, for my triathlon, I'll throw out what kept me going, because when I did my triathlon, similarly to, again, me and Rob were talking about doing those British qualifiers possibly in October in a duathlon. And the thing that keeps me going whenever I'm doing any kind of distance work, even when I'm doing like trying to go for like a 5K PR. So I'm very externally motivated, hands down. I'm always motivated externally. So for when I did my triathlon first, it was charitable. There was no way I was stopping in that entire triathlon. Because the thing that motivated me, my nan, when she was ill, she physically couldn't move. So she's in a position that, I'm not in. So why don't I utilize my body to show what it can do? And then my granddad, when I went and saw him a couple of weeks ago, like, the man has been bedridden for like 6 to 8 months. He can't move. So who am I to say that I should stop doing something because I feel a little bit uncomfortable, yet these people are laid in very simple situations, but they physically can't do normal bodily functions. And that is what kind of internally for me is the driving force. Like, I just know that, like, for you guys doing it for the Hampshire and Isle of Wight, there have been people left paralyzed because of accidents that they've had. And you guys now have the ability to go out and do things that they'd love to do and raise money to help them in their care. And like, for me, that's such a spectacular motivator to like drive yourself forward throughout. And I'm going to be shouting at you guys out of that van the whole time. If you start to flag, I'll be like, what about the people that physically can't move, boys? Like, come on, kick on. And I think that's something that's really important. And you've done like a clever thing, having a nice support team and keeping people around you to try and drive that on, because so many people have come to us for coaching. If people didn't know it, Rob did online coaching back in the past. He did the PT works where we first met. And when you're coaching people, it's the same thing. People will come to you and they'll have a lull, but then you got to just remind them that there's people out there that are struggling more than they are. So almost without being rude, you do need to suck it up. Like, there are kind of times when you just got to be like, this is going to perpetuate you forwards. Yeah. Anyway, that's my 10 pence on that kind of motivating.
One thing is that if those people have never experienced gooch pain before, then that's the only thing you can allow, because gooch pain is the worst feeling ever.
It's the feeling that you don't know what it's like until you have it, and it is bad. That is bad.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like, you can only do so much. Like, I spoke to many cyclists saying, "Well, you shouldn't feel any gooch pain. Like, you obviously got not a good bib shorts, or you haven't got the right saddle or the right bike fit. But at some point, you're going to get it. like, you know, it is just uncomfortable.
Apologies for interrupting the podcast. We know you're getting fully engrossed into this episode, and we really appreciate you stopping on the video on YouTube or on Spotify if you found us through one of the search pages. Make sure to leave a review and a subscription if you haven't already. But we just wanted to interject a point here that me and Nick have 15 years of coaching experience between us, and it's only getting better as we've got better guests on the podcast. The only way we can do that, though, is with the growth of our program that we've just released. We've got a 12-month Perform Well program, which has just dropped, and we'd love you guys to get involved in it. If you want to know more details, make sure to head to the description, as we've got our website in there, which can give you a full overlay of the program. We're looking to help career-driven professionals, entrepreneurs, small business owners, and anyone dominate their life by improving their lifestyle. Me and Nick like to claim ourselves as experts in this area, and if you want to check out some of our other transformations, I'm sure you do. We've got some amazing people who have performed so well off the back of this program. Have a cracking day, and we really appreciate your time. Let's get back to the podcast.
But if we're talking about human nature for a second, right? Why do people do long distance stuff? Like, if you look back at the history of humans and what we've accomplished in the past, is that we have a tendency to want to explore and push ourselves as a species. And that's what makes us great at, like, obviously, you know, our expansion in the past. And so there is a distinct, like, thing within humans where we want to prove ourselves and grow and do something that is adventurous and to the next level. And so I'm always just trying to seek a new adventure, whether that's doing the boxing thing last year, this year, or the potential world record thing that will be next year. It's something about chasing a goal that keeps you aligned, that gives you purpose, and gets rid of the anxiety of not knowing what you're doing in life. And it doesn't have to be training related, but normally when you're doing something with your body, you're fully integrated, because your body is a major part of you. If you don't look after it, you're screwed. You have to look after it. You have to do something with your body in order to have the maximum enjoyment in life. And so, you know, if we're looking at a human level, I feel like most people are trying to focus on something bigger than themselves.
Well, it always started. That was a huge thing. I mean, I recently listened to Diary of a CEO, and they had Wim Hof on there explaining his reasoning for the whole ice bath, you know, that he brought out, using ice bath and utilizing them like he does. And it was really interesting listening to his research. I don't know, you boys probably know about this, but they did a study with Wim Hof where they injected E. coli into him. And the man, because of his highly adapted body, he only got a mild, like, headache from it, whilst other people were suffering with, like, high levels of, like, pneumonia and stuff like that. People were severely ill. And Wim Hof, because he'd been doing all his breathing and all his ice bath work, his body was so attuned to these extreme conditions that putting E. coli in him was literally like brushing off some dirt off your shoe. Just a madness, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Wim Hof, his whole thing was about proving that you can switch on your, you can turn up your immune system by basically focusing on your breath and using things like cold exposure to help you build it. Actually, a very interesting thing about him is that he first discovered that by one day jumping into an icy lake and realizing the effect it had on him afterwards. And he started going on his own to the same icy lake every week, just carry on jumping in there for longer and longer each time. But there's a misconception that apparently he froze and then he woke up in the morning out of that freeze, but I don't think that's true.
No, I think he's genuinely so attuned stuff. I mean, Rob, you've given ice baths a go every single day. I mean, it's good to bring up that conversation a little bit. How did you find it for yourself mentally when you were doing your ice baths?
I'm sorry, man. I've just got a picture of Rob in a bin.
This is where the bin comes. Hey, mate,
when the bin comes in.
People walking.
This is a good point, because it's like, what level would you go to have that outcome? Because obviously Wim Hof, you were saying about, he got injected with E. coli and he had a mild headache or a mild cold. But it's like he's had to go to some extreme circumstances to begin with to then put himself in the scenario where his body can adapt that well. But it's like, if you look at it, it's like, how many people do you think would actually put themselves in the scenario every single day to adapt their body, maybe to the same or similar level to what he's done, to then have that positive outcome of having a better immune system to that level? I don't think there'd be many people that do it.
No,
I wouldn't. I'll put my hand up. I hate cold showers. For me, I only have if I'm too hot and I need a shower. I said this before, it's a no-go for me, but you've got to have your different outs, I do my stretches and mobility in the morning. That's basically where I go for, like, if I can do a plank for 7 minutes, then that's great. That's how I start my day. But I do also think the whole ice bath trend is kind of quietened down a little bit now as well. I don't think it's as hot up there as it was beforehand, but you always get this. You get a surge of people doing a certain trend and everyone goes, oh my God, this is something new. This is going to help me. I'm going to lose 60 pounds of fat, because that was another thing that came out, that it can burn body fat.
I mean, I think if you think about ice bath, what's the number one reason why most people want to do it? Like, if you look at people on Instagram and they're doing it, they're trying to build mental toughness. Like, they want control of their mind. A lot of people like see people that are confident and successful, and they're thinking, I want that same level of success and confidence. And they think the ice bath is going to create that discipline in them and the mental toughness to do it. You don't have to do an ice bath to build that. Like, you can learn to go to the gym 3 times a week and then start training heavy and get better and better at it. And that's the same thing. You'll get discipline from that as well. So if you take away the physiological benefits of ice bath, a lot of people are doing it for mental toughness, and there's so many ways to build mental toughness. You know.
No, I agree. It is just one of those things that's over time. I mean, in terms of a tip for people, just start small. Like, you don't need to go in jumping in an ice bath every single day. Like, start with like a 2-minute cold shower. Like, really start really small and build up to it. Because the reason a lot of people don't keep going with things they start is the fact they just jump too far at the deep end. And people expect that kind of same result by doing these kind of larger scale things immediately. And it's about doing these things over time. Like I was saying about planks there, I mentioned it on a podcast a long while ago, that I've been doing planks for the last like 4 years now. And I built up from doing a 30-second plank, from a front plank, side plank for a minute on each. Now I'm doing like 7 minutes, like total in the morning. And that's just like something that I do. But I built up from that starting point. If you would have said do a 2-minute plank at the start, I'd have told you to do one. So, you know, it's different for different people. And actually, interesting, Rob, your partner, Molly, runs a very, very successful business. For herself, do you know any kind of the key stuff that she does to help kind of elevate her own mindset?
Do you know what I'm going to say? Probably best to get her on her and ask her yourself, mate.
We should do it.
Yeah. She is next door.
Yeah. Well, don't worry about it today, because we said about getting her on at a future date. The only reason I asked that question, because it's always interesting from a partner's perspective with a business owner to kind of have an outsider view of what they're doing and your kind of like insight. Elle said this to me the other day. She was like, she finds it fascinating, some of the things that I do, because she sees it from the outside perspective. Whereas when you're in it, you don't really see them as big deals. Like, you know, you don't see these things. Like you guys with the jog, you're training at the minute. I know you see it as a big deal, but you're in it. Whereas all of us are like, fucking hell, that's something that's pretty crazy. But in your heads, you're like, I'm ready to rumble.
Best way to explain that one, like, for example, like, so the SAS, when you think of the SAS, you think fucking, like, you think of the TV program, you think of crazy, like, the crazy guys, Andy McNabb, a lot, with that kind of cold look in their eyes, right? And I thought the same thing. So when I walked up to the doors of the SAS base, that was in Bramley, to do my very first event. I can't know what to talk about. My very first pre-selection run. I remember having all these preconceptions in my head of how crazy it's going to be. When I walked in there, it was the most relaxed environment ever. No one looked like they were a soldier at all, and we just had, you know, they told me to uniron my trousers. It's too neat, and I'm like, wait, what is going on? And then all the magic is gone. And then you're in it, and everything's just got a narrative around it. You know, it's got this pre-built, you know, narrative that it's harder than it is. You know, this cycle, for example, isn't harder than it looks on paper. It's once you're in it and you get used to it, it's just another thing. It's just you're in the moment of doing it. Yeah.
Nick, you done a story or a post maybe a week or so ago, and you were saying about different events that you've done or different things you've started. And the main one was obviously the cycle, where you got a bike and you just started cycling. And obviously then 6 months later, now you're doing this, where it's like this, that different, quite literally different cycle between like things that you start. And it's about like progressively building it up. And it's like what you then said, Dan, it's like, you don't have to jump in. You can just start really, really simple. And it's like linking it back to like mental toughness. It's like, you know, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I wasn't mentally tough, but it's like based upon all the events I've done over years, building everything up gradually, it's like you just build mental toughness. but it doesn't come overnight. And I think some people want it to, where they're like, well, I want to be like that because I see other people doing it. But it's like, well, if someone saw us do the jog, they don't necessarily see that we've been training for the last year and like cycling at like midnight, 1 a.m. in the morning to train for that. And building the ability and the mental toughness to then go into it and video it. And they're the things that they potentially see. But it's like the little things, the little steps, just really, really progressing with it slowly.
Yeah, and some people call them stretch goals, you know, where you pick a goal that is slightly beyond what you feel comfortable with, but not too far ahead that you look at it as impossible. I mean, like when we decided about doing this 3.5 day jog, I obviously said to you, Rob, about doing Land's End Joy Gross. And I said, why don't we do 10 days? We'll do 100 miles a day. We'll enjoy it along the way. We'll have nice little campsites, have a tea and coffee after we've finished. And then Rob goes, no, 3.5 days. I haven't got time for 10 days. And my first thing was, no, mate, that's stupid. And then I went on Google, started reading up about it, and started seeing that it was possible. And then started working out what's the average speed we need, etc. And then, to be honest with you, only in the last 4 weeks I think we've really cracked it. Like this close to the event, we've only just cracked that speed. Just, my God.
Mate, I'm going to have to keep up with you boys. I dread to think the pace you boys shoot around as well with all your pretty little cleats on and your lycra. I'm going to do my best to keep up as best I can.
It's not about speed, Dan. It's efficiency.
It is efficiency. So, I mean, this is the thing as well. I think a lot of people worry about kind of having the tools to do these things. And I know, like Le Jog, you do realistically need specialized bikes. Like hands down, you need a bike fit. You need to make sure that's fit for that kind of crazy stuff. But in general scheme of things, if you wanted to go and do a sprint triathlon, I had an inquiry a few weeks ago about someone wanting to do a sprint triathlon. It isn't about that kind of having to have the best kit, because a lot of people who have the best kit aren't the best cyclists. They're just there with the best kit. It's about kind of just going in there, giving a go, dipping your toe in it. If you like it, then you can start to transcend some more kind of targeted goals and bigger goals. And me and Nick do this coaching wise. We focus on within this like 4-week block with clients, rather than say, look, we want you to lose 5 stone in the next 6 months. And then people feel really bad when they lose 4.9 stone because it's not the 5 stone they've set. So it's about setting these little kind of targets. And as I say, like, you've just got to dip your toe into things to see what you want to enjoy and what you like and where you want to push things. Yeah. Sorry. No, honestly, no, it's fine.
I thought you just about to finish there. Sorry.
Wrapping up.
I was going to ask you, what do you think the difference is between a £500 bike and a £10,000 bike?
I knew you were going to say this.
£500 bike and a £10,000 bike.
What's your pick? What do you think?
From a physical, like actual part standpoint, are we just talking like general consensus of between the two?
Like obviously, when people think £10,000 bike, they're thinking, oh, extra performance, I'm going to be better. But that's not necessarily true. It depends, right? So when you think of a £500 versus £10,000 bike, you're probably thinking the 10,000 bike's a lot better, right? In a lot of ways. But it's marginal gains.
Yeah. Well, it's like when you buy that £500 bike, that is the biggest leap you take. Like that genuinely is the biggest leap in performance you'll have, because you're going from, a bike you had as a kid with stabilizers probably for some people, to riding kind of more of a workhorse of bike. Like I bought my Tri-Ban IC 120 a little while ago, and that was the biggest step up in cycling that I had. Now I know that every other bike, like even when I got a, for any bike lovers out there, Bianchi Elite Sport or whatever it was that I got in Lanzarote, all carbon, fully framed. But to be totally honest with you, it didn't feel much different than my Tri-Ban. Like it really didn't. Yeah, I didn't have cleats. I had a special seat. That was pretty much the only difference between it. But these things are more for comfort. They're for comfort when you go into those higher performance levels. And the same thing as you say with cycling, same with running. Like when you buy a pair of like Asics trainers that are 50 quid off Vinted, and then you go and buy yourself some On Clouds or Hockers, there actually isn't that much difference between them. Because if you get a pair of Asics that fit your feet, the difference between them is very negligible. And normally it's just down to how much they weigh as well at that point in time.
Yeah.
That's a really good point, because I'm going to link this in with what you're saying about running and cycling. But then it's like with the gym as well. Because it's like, well, if you took either, Mo Farah or Chris Froome and you put them in a pair of £15 Asics and £100 second-hand giant bike, they're still going to perform really well in it. It's like you're putting a world-class athlete in a scenario where they've still got the equipment. Yeah, it might be a little bit like worse off, but they're still going to perform high. And that's what Nick was saying about marginal gains, where as long as you're doing all of the basics, okay, you have the performance, you've got the basic pieces of equipment, okay, you're still going to perform really, really well. Okay. And then it gets to the point where it's like, well, if you've got all the basics in training, then you go, okay, I might start taking creatine. It's like, oh, we're going to start adding protein powders. Okay, what about maybe beta alanine? Because like we're doing some really quick short runs. We want to, lower the lactate buildup. So we're going to add beta alanine in there now. But it's like you wouldn't add all of those in at the beginning. Same as like you wouldn't add a 10 grand bike for me and Nick. It's like you wouldn't add a 500-pound pair of running spikes at the start of your running career. It's like none of it matters. None of it matters.
No.
Start slow.
I think people just get so engrossed, don't they? They get so engrossed into the price points of stuff. And it's like, I was speaking to people a little while ago about what they should, like, even when I was looking for my first, like, for my bike upgrade from where I was, and I was looking into bikes, and you get so sucked into those price margins. And like immediately you're thinking like a $1 grand Trek bike is going to be way more worth it than buying a tri-band that you can go get serviced for free. When in reality, I don't know anything about bikes. So if something goes wrong, it's better to have that backup and know this didn't cost me an absolute fortune. Yes, to some people, like £500 is a fortune right now. But like in the concept of equipment, you've just got to factor in, just have the small things to get it done. And then you can start to kind of escalate. Because the thing is, stuff like triathlon, stuff like you're doing is an expensive thing to do. But they're extreme margins that if you're going to do it long term, like you boys are thinking about doing, obviously, a triple Ironman, you're doing a world record attempt, aren't you? So when you do stuff like that, that's when you need to think about having reasonable kit because it's going to help you more with durability and having that kind of backup guarantee that it's not going to break down within 5 minutes. So I think you make a very good point there. It is genuinely about like, go on.
This is what I mean, because it's like, you'd say that the extreme lengths, triple Ironman, do like a world record attempt, but the jog is still, I would say, quite extreme. And it's like, you look at my bike, it's a 300-pound second-hand Giant, and it's like that's done 10B Ironman.
It's a fake Giant, man. It's, to be fair though, you do have Shimano 105 drivetrain, which is for those that don't know. You've got your entry-level B-Train, then you've got the Sora that I have, then you've got Tiagra, then you've got 105, and then Ultegra.
But this is what I mean.
So to be fair,
this is what I mean, though.
It's not bad.
It's an underperformance bike. Like you wouldn't get an athlete from Tour de France coming in and they'll look at my bike like, it's shit. But it's like it's seen me through an Ironman. It's seen me through 2 years of training. It's going to see me through the triathlon soon. It's going to see me through the jog. And people will look at that like that's still pretty crazy. But they won't actually look at my bike thinking that's a shit bike. To me, I know it cost me 300 quid, and it's nowhere near as much as maybe a Canyon 20 grand bike. But it's like you don't need those things yet.
You don't. And that's a good thing, because that means anyone that's listening that wants to obviously start in the sport, you don't need something expensive. And you can course correct as you go. Like most cycling enthusiasts, there's loads out there that obviously ride amazing kit. Most of them start off with a crap bike, or in terms of like a cheap bike is what I'm trying to say. And then they start adding things as they go. And like that's where me and Rob are kind of at. Dan, you're obviously in that as well, and you're potentially going to be upgrading yours as you go. But probably the best thing that I had done to my bike as an upgrade would be the bike fit. Not even the bike itself. It's just being shown how to sit in the bike properly and make the most of my body as a performance machine. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because it does make a difference. It really does. And I'm sure when I get mine done, it'll be a complete, turnaround of it all. But I think we'll obviously wrap up the podcast there. We have done a very stellar one there, boys. And obviously we've got the jog coming up. Now, one thing we're saying, and this is in the works, this is a possibility for our viewers. After the boys do the jog, we are hoping to possibly do a podcast episode. Now, it depends how they are. It depends how everything goes. But there is the viability that we'll have like a live podcast, not live. Well, we could do it live. We could do a live. We could do a live podcast with the boys once they finish the jog. Now, obviously, they're raising money for the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Air Ambulance. So if you could drop any donations, make sure to head over to their page. I'll be dropping mine literally after we've done this podcast. And what we're trying to do is obviously raise enough money for these boys. They're doing amazing stuff, and it's such a massive achievement to be doing it. We'll be documenting the whole thing, so stay tuned. You're going to be seeing them all over social media for the whole of the week. Anything for you boys to add towards the end there?
No, just donate. Donate some money,
Yeah.
guys. This charity is needed. I mean, I know there's been some situations that Bob's experienced recently that have been close to home with the Hampshire and Isle of Wight air ambulance, but it's one of those things you don't think you need until you need it. Like, we are the only ones supporting these charities. There is no government help. It is down to the people helping them. So, donate.
100%. Well, we'll wrap up there. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Make sure to like, subscribe, and drop us a follow if you haven't already over on Spotify. We appreciate the 5 stars you're dropping us at the minute, and we're nearly 100 subs, so make sure to stay tuned, and we'll be back with another episode next week with a huge guest, might I add, next week, in the mighty Simon Squibb. So the man with over 6 million followers will be joining us, which is absolutely stellar stuff. So, yeah, we'll catch you guys later.